Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the WeAreChange news show. And of course, we are going to be talking about the most important news, and that is the latest developments, troop movements, and how we're getting very close to World War III. And I'm not over-exaggerating this, and you will understand after watching this video. But first of all, the world's attention is on the AI machine cyborg himself, Mark Zuckerberg, as he testifies in front of the U.S. government right now, which most likely he will lie, just like he did previously before when he said Facebook does not share your information with third parties. And ultimately, Google does the same thing, plus they have 10 times more information on you than does Facebook. And face it, you have no privacy online. Jason Burmis will actually be talking about Mark Zuckerberg on the backup channel, which of course you could find on our main YouTube channel right here on the right hand top corner. Now, as the mainstream media is obsessing about Mark Zuckerberg, we are continuing to forget the bigger story that's in the background right now and has a lot more significance. And that, of course, is U.S. President Donald Trump saying that he will respond to an alleged Syrian gas attack, quote, very quickly, and of course, with the might of the U.S. military, which Russia said they would respond to. Now, obviously, this is a very dangerous and tense situation that the world is in right now. But the mainstream media, on the other hand, predominantly almost all of the mainstream media, whether coming from left or right, along with the politicians right now, are not only saying that we must go to war and that we must overthrow Assad, but they're also vilifying anyone standing in their way, questioning the official narrative, calling for peace, calling for an investigation as a, quote, white supremacist. And the level of war propaganda out there right now is absolutely sickening, with even the Washington Post writing articles with headlines saying Trump's strikes on Syria last year were, quote, pretty popular. Again, trying to shape the dialogue in order to fool the people so they go along with another pointless war. And if that wasn't enough, they actually unearthed old warmongering criminal politicians like Tony Blair, who was one of the leading voices behind the Iraq War that killed nearly an estimated 1 million people, to come out now saying that the United Kingdom should take and support military action against Bashar al-Assad and the Syrian government, leaving many people scratching in their head, because you would think there would be a better representative to start your war than Tony Blair. And it's not just Tony Blair, it's politicians from the left and right, including, of course, John McCain, who of course is invoking the 42 people killed during this alleged chemical attack, saying that it was a direct response to Donald Trump saying he was leaving Syria just a few days ago. And of course, the media is running with a lot of graphic imagery of children suffering and dying in order to have this bigger push for what will really be more children and people suffering. But the media always seems to forget the U.S. doesn't really have the best track record when it comes to humanitarian rights, especially when it comes to their foreign policy actions in Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and of course Yemen, with their Saudi Arabian partners, which of course are very close to Donald Trump and his immediate family, with even the Saudi crown prince recently bragging that he received classified U.S. intelligence from Jared Kushner before their corrupt crackdown that led to torture and death in their country. But most importantly, if the media and all these politicians really cared about innocent children, they of course would address the humanitarian crisis right now that's happening in Yemen that has left 5,000 children dead, with 400,000 children malnutritioned right now, mainly because of the war that Saudi Arabia and the United States, in cohesion with, are launching against that country. And let's just be honest here, because when the mainstream media openly ignores the worst humanitarian crisis happening in the world right now, along with the politicians who are directly responsible for it with U.S. foreign policy, you should of course directly question why those same entities are pushing for a war for, quote, humanitarian purposes. Because they're not. And there's another reason that this is happening. And it's not just that issue that raises people's concerns and issues with this latest military action that Donald Trump will take, but also geopolitically, it makes absolutely no sense for the Syrian government to commit this attack at this very time. Now, the facts behind this chemical weapons attack are still unknown, and there has not been an official investigation. But we do know that the United States has actively pursued regime change in Syria for a very long time now, even with 4-star U.S. Army General and Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, Wesley Clark, coming out and talking about how there was a plan for war with 7 countries in 5 years, all the way back in 2002, which of course listed Syria as one of those countries. Now, the U.S. president is taking very significant steps, which is foreshadowing that this will soon happen. Just today, it was announced that Donald Trump canceled his South America trip in order to oversee the Syrian military response that we're all waiting for. The United States, France, and the United Kingdom are preparing air naval units for a sustained assault on Syria right now. Israel has already jumped the gun and bombed Syrian military positions. And even Saudi Arabia announced that they would join the coalition against Syria, while at the same time, airline companies operating in the Middle East just received a request to change their routes for the next 48 hours away from Syria because of the proposed attack on that country. And it looks like we're in the final stages before this war that will be initiated by the United Kingdom, France, United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. And of course, on the other side, we have China, Russia, Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah. Russia, of course, is saying how they are furious as U.S. naval destroyers are approaching Syria without notification. Iran is threatening to restart their nuclear enrichment and says that they could start within 4 days. And it's not just Russia and Iran that are in play here, but a bigger ally to both of those countries that, of course, is not getting much media attention in the Western media, and that, of course, is China, which just said a few days ago their relationship with Russia is at the best level in history. And of course, they are only cooperating with each other economically and militarily, as diplomatic relations between both of those countries and the United States are at an all-time low and getting lower. China, of course, also has a relationship with Syria and has offered them supplies during the civil war conflict that the country has been going through since 2011. They are also backing investigations and probes at the United Nations into this suspected Syrian chemical attack and openly warning the United States against any military action in Syria. And they have even told Russia that they would support them against the United States. Now, obviously, these are very strong words, and whether they will be met with action, it is still very unclear, but they should be taken very seriously. Now, of course, when it comes to big international events like this, there is always 2 sides of the stories. And of course, the Russian story is completely different than the United States, with them saying specifically with their specialists that they, quote, found no trace of chemical weapons in the attack in Duma. They, of course, cordoned off the area for themselves and are even going as far to say that there was no evidence of a chemical attack at all. With a lot of the information coming out about the attack from organizations like the White Helmets, which of course many people say have a clear bias in this matter. The Russians are also saying that their officers and doctors inspected Duma's hospital and found no patients with chemical poisoning symptoms there. And Russia just weeks ago announced that there would be a staged chemical attack that would be blamed on Bashar al-Assad. Now, obviously, that's information coming from the complete other opposite side, but the Russians are not taking this situation and this latest escalation lightly by Donald Trump, and they have issued stark warnings against the United States and their plans to attack Syria, saying that if this happens, there's a possibility of a military clash between Russia and the United States. Of course, Russian warplanes are joining the U.S. naval destroyer fleet right now as the U.S. moves their warships closer to Syria, with even reports of Russian strategic bombers right now being airborne, ready to retaliate against an imminent attack by the U.S., UK, and French forces. There's even other reports, which I haven't been able to verify independently, that say that Chinese warships are also in the Mediterranean, who of course would naturally join the Russian Navy. And we're also hearing from 4 U.S. officials that Russia is right now jamming U.S. drones in Syria, which of course is, quote, seriously affecting military operations in that region. An accusation that, of course, the Russians are denying right now. But already, this proxy war, which we have been documenting telling you about for years now, warning you that this would eventually lead to this scenario right now, has already escalated to a situation where U.S. and Russian forces have already killed each other in the battlefield in Syria just even a month and a half ago, where Russian mercenaries were attacked with U.S. strikes and killed dozens of them, already proving how dangerously the situation could quickly escalate in that region, especially right now with both sides preparing for the worst. And it's not just an actual hot war that we have to contemplate here, but also a financial war that has been happening throughout the last few years that we've been reporting to you on this YouTube channel, especially the one escalating recently between the United States and China and their trade war, which is more significantly related to the petrodollar, since a lot of the countries that the United States is now facing off against, Iran, Syria, Russia, China, have been making very significant moves against the petrodollar, against, of course, the US dollar being traded on the world market in exchange for oil and other goods, which of course gives the dollar its value and presence on the world market. And again, it goes along with the geopolitical military posturing that we have been seeing from the United States, that even just recently sent US warships to sail through the South China Sea, and of course the man-made Chinese military bases that are being built there right now, which of course the United States has actively lobbied against and offered a harsher response to the United States for, opening up clashes that can not only happen there, but also Taiwan, and of course open up a complete other battlefield with China, which to me is a more formidable threat against the United States and a country that should be closely looked into, especially with the impeding strikes that Donald Trump plans to commit against Syria. But with all of this, we have to ask, what is it in the U.S. national interest to commit these strikes? Obviously, bluntly speaking, human rights are not the issue here. There's a way bigger geopolitical and foreign policy game involving here that, of course, ultimately doesn't work to anyone's benefit. And I mean rationally speaking here, because war should never be the answer, and it is never something that helps people or progresses people. Obviously, the interest of Saudi Arabia and Israel will be met through Donald Trump's actions, but at what cost will all of these things be done, especially to the American people, especially to the world, with these world powers bunting heads inside of Syria right now? Financial systems, whether they're US, Chinese, or Russian, are all artificially inflated and backed by nothing but trust anyway. So why in the malarkey is this even happening? Which is a question I wanted to raise to you. Let me know what you guys think, especially in the comment section below, which of course I will be answering within the first hour of this video being released. But, damn, it's not looking good for everyone. And whatever your source of information is, I tried to give you a clear picture of what's happening here. If you thought I did that, share this video with your friends and family members, because I think it's a critically important analysis that you're not getting anywhere else. Because, war should never be the answer. There really never is a winner from war. So yeah, stay tuned, as obviously I will be covering this issue very closely. Thank you again, everyone who donates on patreon.com/WeAreChange and keeps our independent media organization independent and not a part of the military-industrial complex or Trump bootlicking alternative media that, of course, will censor a lot of the important information and context that they don't want you to know. But if you're watching this channel, you already know that. And that's why I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.